Rancher won the lottery thinking he'd get rich, but the Apache widow owned the land beneath him. Tom had always believed that life was fair in the way it rewarded hard work. He grew up on the open land of the Southwest, where the sky seemed endless and the wind carried dust from one field to another. His family had lived there for generations. His father and grandfather had raised cattle on the same land, and Tom had learned from them the value of patience, responsibility, and strength. Every morning he would wake up before sunrise, check on the animals, fix fences, and plan the day ahead. It was not an easy life, but it was a life he respected. It was a life he knew. Even though Tom worked harder than most people he knew, the ranch never seemed to get easier. The weather could be harsh, the summers were hot and dry, and the winters could bring cold winds that made everything feel stiff and frozen. The land was beautiful, but it was also demanding. There were times when the cattle did not grow as well as they should, and the grass did not come back after a drought. Every year, Tom had to figure out how to make the ranch survive. Some years were better than others, but he always felt like he was one step behind. He had inherited the ranch when his father passed away. Tom was proud of it, but he also felt the weight of responsibility. The ranch was not just land and cattle, it was his family's legacy. He wanted to protect it and pass it on to his own children one day. But he worried that the ranch was not making enough money to stay in the family. There were bills to pay, loans to manage, and repairs that could not wait. The world was changing, and it seemed like everything was getting more expensive. Tom was not sure how much longer he could keep going. Still, he never complained. He believed that if he worked hard enough, he could overcome anything. He had a strong belief in himself, and he believed in the value of effort. He had seen his father work through hard times, and he had seen his grandfather do the same. He believed that he could do it too. One evening, after a long day of work, Tom drove into town to buy supplies. He stopped at the small store near the highway, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. The store had a quiet, familiar feeling. It smelled like coffee and warm bread. Tom nodded to the cashier and picked up the things he needed. He also noticed a bright sign by the counter. It was an advertisement for the lottery. The numbers were large and bold, and the prize amount was written in a way that made it seem almost unreal. Tom had never been a person who spent money on games of chance. He believed that money should be earned through work. But on this day, he felt tired and worn down. He had been thinking about the ranch, the bills, and the future. He felt a small, strange desire to imagine a different life. He thought, just for a moment, that maybe luck could come to him too. Maybe the universe would finally reward him for all the effort he had put in. He looked at the sign again. The prize amount was huge. It was enough to change his life. Tom thought about what he could do with that money. He could pay off all his debts. He could repair the fences and buy better equipment. He could even expand the ranch and make it more successful. He could stop worrying every day about whether the ranch would survive. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to feel a spark of hope. He walked to the counter and asked for a lottery ticket. The cashier raised an eyebrow, surprised to see someone like Tom buying one. Tom smiled and said it was just for fun. He did not want to admit that he was hoping for something more. The cashier handed him the ticket, and Tom thanked him. He left the store and returned to his truck, holding the small piece of paper like it was a secret. On the drive back to the ranch, Tom kept thinking about the numbers. He tried to imagine what his life would be like if he won. He imagined being able to breathe easier, to feel free from the constant worry. He imagined being able to provide a better life for his children. He imagined being able to work without fear of failure. The thoughts made him feel lighter, almost like a burden had been lifted. For a moment, he forgot about the hard work and the struggles. That night, he put the ticket in a safe place. He did not want to lose it. He went to bed with the ticket in his mind, and he dreamed about the future. The next morning, he woke up early and went about his work, but the thought of the lottery stayed with him. He tried to focus on the day, but his mind kept drifting back to the idea of winning. When the day finally came, he turned on the television to watch the lottery drawing. His heart beat faster than usual. He felt nervous, but also excited. The numbers were called one by one. Tom wrote them down on a piece of paper. He checked each number carefully. When the last number was called, he looked at the paper again. He could not believe what he saw. He had won. At first he thought it was a mistake. He checked the numbers again and again. He stared at the ticket as if it might change. He felt a rush of emotions. He felt shock, joy, and disbelief, all at once. He could hardly breathe. He sat down on the edge of his bed, holding the ticket with shaking hands. Tom felt like he had stepped into a dream. It was hard to accept that something like this could happen to him. He had never thought of himself as the kind of person who could win the lottery. He was a simple rancher, living a simple life. But now, everything had changed in a single moment. He called his wife, Sarah, and told her to come home right away. Kay did not know how to explain it, but he knew she would understand. When she arrived, he showed her the ticket. Sarah's eyes widened. She covered her mouth with her hand and stared at the paper. Tears filled her eyes. She hugged him tightly. They stood there for a long time, holding each other, unable to speak. Word spread quickly through the small town. People came to congratulate Tom and his family. They brought food, hugs, and good wishes. Some people smiled with genuine happiness, while others looked surprised and even a little jealous. But the overall feeling was one of excitement. Everyone wanted to share in the joy. For the first time in a long time, Tom felt a sense of relief. The weight of his worries seemed to lift. He imagined how the money could solve the problems that had been haunting him. He imagined paying off the debts, fixing the fences, and improving the ranch. He imagined being able to finally feel secure. The future suddenly looked bright. But as the celebration continued, Tom began to realize something else. The money could also bring new challenges. It could change how people saw him. It could change his relationships. It could bring new responsibilities and difficult decisions. Tom knew that life would not be exactly the same, even if everything seemed perfect. Still, he believed that the lottery win was the answer he had been waiting for. He believed it was the beginning of a new chapter. He felt hopeful and confident. He thought that he could finally live the life he had worked so hard for. That night, as he stood outside looking at the wide open land, Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude. He had always loved the ranch, but now he felt like he could truly protect it. He felt like he had been given a second chance. He did not know what the future held, but he was ready to face it. He believed that with the lottery win, he could finally achieve the dream he had been chasing for so long. And so, with the stars shining above and the land stretching out in front of him, Tom began to imagine a future that was brighter than anything he had ever dared to hope for. After the lottery win, Tom felt like the world had changed. Everything around him seemed brighter. Even the ordinary tasks on the ranch felt easier because he believed that money could solve every problem. He woke up each morning with a new energy, and he felt proud to think that his hard work had finally paid off. For the first time in his life, he felt like he could breathe. But as the days passed, Tom began to notice that the win was not just a blessing. It also brought attention. People in town started looking at him differently. Some of them were friendly, and some were curious. A few people seemed to be watching him more closely than before. Tom tried to ignore it, but he could feel the change in the air. The news spread beyond the town. A local newspaper wrote an article about him. The story was not just about the lottery win. It was about the rancher who had been struggling for years and now finally had his chance. People from other towns began to talk about him. Some people congratulated him, and others whispered about how he would spend the money. It felt strange to be suddenly famous for something that had happened by chance. Tom and Sarah began making plans for the future. They talked about paying off the loans and fixing the old fences. They talked about buying better equipment and improving the ranch. They also talked about the possibility of expanding the land. Tom had always dreamed of owning more land. He had imagined a larger ranch, more cattle, and a stronger future. Now, with the lottery money, it seemed possible. Tom started meeting with a financial advisor to learn how to manage the money. The advisor explained that a large sum of money could disappear quickly if not managed carefully. Tom listened carefully, but he was also excited. He wanted to make sure the money lasted. He wanted to protect his family and his ranch. He began to feel like he was finally in control. The advisor suggested that Tom should not rush into any decisions. He told him to take time, to plan carefully, and to think about long-term goals. Tom agreed. He wanted to be smart about it. He did not want to make mistakes. He wanted the money to be a blessing, not a problem. One day, Tom received a letter in the mail. It was from the county land office. At first, he thought it was just another routine letter, but when he opened it, he felt his heart sink. The letter said that there was an issue with the boundary lines of his ranch. It said that a portion of the land he believed he owned was not actually registered under his name. It was still listed as belonging to another owner. Tom reread the letter several times. He could not believe it. He had always believed that the land belonged to his family. He had never questioned it. He had never thought that there could be a mistake. But the letter made it clear that there was a problem. A part of the land was not legally his. Tom felt a mix of emotions. He felt anger, confusion, and worry. He felt like he had been cheated. He felt like the world was playing a trick on him. He thought that he had finally been given a chance to secure his future. But now it felt like the future was slipping away. He decided to talk to his lawyer. The lawyer explained that land boundaries could be complicated, especially in rural areas. Sometimes old records were unclear or incomplete. Sometimes land had been divided long ago, and the lines were not accurate. The lawyer said that it was possible to challenge the claim, but it would require time and money. Tom was shocked. He had just won the lottery, and now he was facing a legal problem. He had thought that the money would solve everything, but he realized that some problems were not easy to fix. He realized that money did not always mean certainty. He realized that even with a large sum of money, he could still face challenges. Tom decided to visit the land office to see the records for himself. He wanted to understand what was happening. When he arrived, he met a clerk who showed him the old maps and documents. The clerk explained that the land in question had been registered under a different name for many years. The records showed that the land had been passed down through a family, and it was not part of Tom's ranch. Tom stared at the documents in disbelief. He looked at the boundary lines and compared them to the land he knew so well. He realized that the land in question was not just a small piece of unused ground. It was a part of the ranch that he had always believed belonged to his family. It was a part of the land where he had built fences, planted grass, and cared for the cattle. It was a part of the land where he had worked for years. He felt a deep sense of loss. He felt like the land was slipping through his fingers. He thought about the time he had spent working on that land. He thought about the memories he had made there. He felt like his family's history was being taken away from him. Tom decided to visit the land himself. He drove to the area and walked along the boundary lines. He saw the old fence posts and the worn paths that the cattle used. He felt the soil beneath his feet and looked at the landscape. He realized that this land was not just a piece of property. It was a part of his life. It was a part of his story. As he stood there, he noticed a small house in the distance. He had seen it before, but he had never paid much attention to it. It was an old home, simple and quiet. He wondered who lived there. He wondered if the owner knew that Tom believed the land was part of his ranch. He felt a mix of curiosity and frustration. Tom decided to approach the house. He walked up the path and knocked on the door. A woman opened it. She looked older, with gentle eyes and a calm presence. Her name was Maria. She was an Apache widow who had lived in the area for many years. She had inherited the land from her family, and she had worked hard to keep it. Tom introduced himself and explained the situation. He told her that he had just won the lottery and that he was planning to expand his ranch. He explained that he had believed the land was part of his property. He asked if she would consider selling it or allowing him to use it. Maria listened carefully. She did not show anger or surprise. She spoke calmly and respectfully. She explained that the land had been in her family for generations. She explained that it was not just land to her. It was a place of memory and tradition. It was a place where her family had lived and where her ancestors had been buried. She explained that she had fought hard to keep the land, and she did not want to give it up. Tom listened to her words, but he could not fully understand. He had always believed that land was something that could be owned, sold, or bought. He had always believed that money could solve any problem. But now he realized that some things were not just about money. Some things were about history, culture, and identity. He felt a new sense of respect for Maria. He realized that she was not just a neighbor. She was a person with a deep connection to the land. He realized that his belief in ownership was not the same as hers. He realized that the land meant different things to different people. After the meeting, Tom returned to his ranch feeling unsettled. He could not stop thinking about Maria and her words. He felt a strange mix of emotions. He felt frustration, but also respect. He felt a desire to find a solution, but he also felt the weight of the truth. Tom began to understand that his lottery win had not solved all his problems. It had given him money, but it had also revealed new challenges. He realized that the future was not as simple as he had imagined. He realized that the land was not just a resource. It was a story. It was a memory. It was a part of someone else's life, too. As the days passed, Tom continued to work on the ranch, but he felt a new sense of uncertainty. He wondered what would happen next. He wondered if he would be able to keep the land he loved. He wondered if the lottery win would be a blessing or a test. He wondered if he could find a way to move forward without hurting anyone. The ranch was still the same land, with the same sky and the same wind. But Tom's view of it had changed. He now saw the land not just as a place to work, but as a place that belonged to people with their own stories. He realized that his life was connected to others in ways he had never imagined. And so, the dream that had begun with hope now carried a new weight. Tom was no longer sure what the future would bring, but he knew one thing for certain. His lottery win had opened a door he had never expected to find. Tom felt the weight of the situation more than ever now. The lottery win that had once felt like a miracle was now starting to feel complicated. He had expected the money to solve all his problems, but he was learning that it could also bring new ones. The land issue was not something he could ignore. It was a real problem that needed to be dealt with carefully. Tom tried to think of a solution. He knew he could hire a lawyer to fight for the land, but he also knew that legal battles could be long and expensive. He thought about the money he had won. He had worked hard to earn it, but he had not earned it in the way he had earned the ranch. He had not built it through years of work. It had come to him suddenly, almost by chance. Now he felt like he had to use it wisely. He began to meet with his lawyer more often. The lawyer explained the process and the possible outcomes. He said that the land record showed that Maria had legal ownership. He said that challenging the ownership could be difficult and might not succeed. He also said that even if Tom could prove that the land had been used by his family for many years, it might not be enough to change the legal title. Tom listened carefully, but he felt frustrated. He thought about the time his family had spent on the land. He thought about the work his father and grandfather had done. He thought about how he had always believed the land belonged to his family. He wondered how it was possible that the land could belong to someone else. He felt a sense of unfairness. He felt like he had been wronged. But the more he thought about it, the more he began to realize that the issue was not only about legal rights, it was also about history. The land had a long story that he did not fully understand. It was not just his story. It belonged to other people too. It belonged to Maria and her family. It belonged to the Apache community. It belonged to a history that had been passed down through generations. Tom decided to visit Maria again. He wanted to understand her better. He wanted to know why the land was so important to her. He hoped that by talking he could find a solution that would be fair. He drove to her house and knocked on the door. Maria opened it and greeted him with a calm expression. She invited him inside. They sat at her small table, and she offered him tea. Tom felt a sense of nervousness. He did not know how the conversation would go. He wanted to ask her for a compromise, but he also wanted to be respectful. He did not want to sound rude or demanding. He did not want to make her feel threatened. Tom started the conversation by explaining his situation again. He told her that he had always believed the land was part of his ranch. He explained that he had worked hard for years and that the ranch was his family's legacy. He told her about the lottery win and how he had hoped to expand the ranch to secure the future. He asked her if she would consider selling the land or allowing him to use it for grazing. Maria listened quietly. She did not interrupt him. When he finished speaking, she took a moment before responding. She explained that the land was part of her family's history. She told him that her grandparents had lived there and her parents had lived there. She told him that the land was a place where her family had held ceremonies and traditions. She told him that it was a place where her ancestors were buried. Tom felt a sudden silence in the room. He realized that he had not thought about the land in that way. He had thought about it as a resource. He had thought about it as a piece of property. He had not thought about it as a sacred place. He had not thought about the deep meaning it could hold for someone else. Maria continued speaking. She explained that her family had fought hard to keep the land. She explained that there had been many challenges over the years. She explained that some people had tried to take the land away. She explained that her family had worked through the legal process to keep it. She explained that losing it would be like losing a part of herself. Tom listened, and he began to feel a new sense of understanding. He realized that he had been thinking only about his own needs. He realized that he had not considered the history and the meaning of the land for others. He began to feel a sense of shame. He realized that he had been unfair in his assumptions. He realized that his belief in ownership had blinded him. After their conversation, Tom left Maria's house feeling changed. He still felt the need to protect his ranch, but he also felt the need to be fair. He began to think about what he could do that would be respectful to Maria and her family. He began to understand that the solution would not be simple. He began to understand that he would need to find a way to move forward without causing harm. As the days passed, Tom continued to think about the situation. He spoke to his family about it. He told them what Maria had said. His wife Sarah listened carefully. She suggested that they should not fight. She suggested that they should try to find a way to cooperate. She reminded Tom that money could not buy everything. She reminded him that there were things more important than land. Tom also spoke to his children. He wanted them to understand the situation. He wanted them to learn from it. He wanted them to see that respect and fairness were important. He told them that the land was not just a piece of property. It was part of someone else's life too. He told them that they needed to be careful and thoughtful. Tom decided to explore other options. He considered leasing land from Maria instead of trying to take it. He thought about ways he could work with her. He thought about how he could use the land in a way that would benefit both of them. He realized that there might be a way to make the situation work without causing conflict. He also began to research the history of the land. He visited the local library and looked at old records. He talked to older residents in the area. He learned about the history of the Apache community and how land ownership had been a struggle for many families. He learned that the land had been taken and returned many times throughout history. He learned that the story of land in the Southwest was complex. The more he learned, the more he felt a sense of humility. He realized that his life had been shaped by a history he had not known. He realized that he had been living on land that had been part of someone else's story. He realized that his own family's story was only one part of the larger story. One afternoon, Tom received a call from his lawyer. The lawyer told him that Maria had received a legal notice. Someone had filed a claim to challenge her ownership. The lawyer said that the claim was not from Tom, but from another party who wanted to take the land. Tom felt a shock. He realized that the land was not only important to Maria, but also to other people who saw it as a chance for profit. He realized that the situation could become even more complicated. Tom felt a strong desire to help Maria. He realized that he did not want to see her lose the land. He realized that he had the money and the ability to support her if needed. He realized that he could use his win for something more meaningful than expanding his ranch. He began to think about how he could protect the land and support Maria. He reached out to Maria and asked if she needed help. He offered to assist with legal fees or to help her find support from the community. Maria was surprised by his offer. She did not expect him to help. She had expected him to continue fighting for the land. But Tom's offer showed her that he was changing. It showed her that he was willing to respect her ownership and her story. Maria thanked him, but she said she would think about it. She said that she did not want to accept help if it meant losing her independence. She said that she wanted to handle the situation on her own terms. Tom respected her choice. He told her that he would support her in any way she needed, and he would not pressure her. As the story began to spread in the community, people started to see Tom differently. Some people respected him for trying to do the right thing. Some people still saw him as someone who wanted the land, but Tom was determined to prove that he was not the kind of person who would harm others for his own gain. He wanted to show that he could change. The situation was still uncertain, but Tom felt a new sense of purpose. He realized that the lottery win had given him more than money. It had given him a chance to learn, to grow, and to become a better person. He realized that the land was not just a resource. It was a place with meaning, history, and life. And so, Tom continued his work on the ranch, but now he did it with a different heart. He worked with more respect, more humility, and more understanding. He knew that the future was still unclear, But he also knew that he was no longer the same person he had been before. Tom's life had changed in ways he never expected. The lottery win had brought hope, but it had also brought complications. He had learned that money could open doors, but it could also reveal problems that were hidden for years. The land dispute had become the most important issue in his life. He had expected the future to be easy, but instead, he was facing a challenge that was much bigger than he had imagined. As the days passed, the legal claim against Maria became more serious. It was not just a simple notice anymore. The claim had turned into a formal dispute, and it could take a long time to resolve. Tom could see how much stress Maria was under. He could see that she was tired, worried, and unsure of what would happen next. She tried to stay strong, but Tom could tell that the situation was affecting her deeply. Tom had not expected to become emotionally involved in the situation. He had started out wanting to expand his ranch, but now he found himself caring about Maria's well-being. He realized that the land was more than a piece of property. It was a part of her life. It was connected to her family's history and her culture. He began to feel a sense of responsibility. He began to feel like he had to help. He started spending more time with Maria, not to pressure her, but to understand her better. He would visit her house and bring small gifts, like fresh bread or coffee. He would sit with her and listen to her stories. He learned about her life, her family, and her memories. He learned about the traditions that were important to her. He learned about the struggles she had faced over the years. Maria began to open up to him. She told him about her childhood and how she had grown up on the land. She told him about the ceremonies that had been held there. She told him about the stories her grandmother had told her. Tom listened with respect. He realized that he was learning something he had never known before. He realized that the land was not just a place. It was a memory, a history, and a living connection to the past. One day, Maria invited Tom to a small gathering at her home. She told him that she wanted him to meet some of her family members. Tom felt nervous, but he accepted the invitation. He arrived at her home and saw a few people sitting in the yard. They greeted him politely. They were cautious, but they were also curious. They had heard about Tom and the land dispute. They were not sure what to think of him. Maria introduced Tom to her family. She told them that Tom had been kind and respectful. She told them that he was trying to understand the situation. The family listened quietly. They did not speak much, but Tom could feel their eyes on him. He felt a sense of pressure. He wanted to show them that he was sincere. He wanted to prove that he was not there to cause harm. The gathering was simple. They shared food and stories. They talked about the land and their memories. Tom listened carefully. He realized that the land was more than a place. It was a part of their identity. It was a part of their family's story. He felt a deep sense of respect. He realized that he had been wrong to think of the land as something he could simply take. After the gathering, Tom walked home feeling thoughtful. He realized that he had been living in his own world for too long. He had been focused on his own needs and his own dreams. He had not considered the lives of others. He had not considered the history of the land. He realized that he had been blind to the bigger picture. Tom also noticed that his own family was watching him carefully. They could see the changes in him. They could see that he was thinking differently. His wife, Sarah, noticed that he was quieter than before. She noticed that he seemed more thoughtful. She asked him what was on his mind. Tom told her about the gathering and what he had learned. Sarah listened and smiled. She told him that she was proud of him. She told him that she believed he was doing the right thing. But even though Tom was changing inside, the situation was still stressful. The legal claim was moving forward, and Tom knew that the outcome was uncertain. He felt the pressure of time. He knew that the longer the dispute lasted, the more difficult it would become. Tarina Capanor. He also knew that the community was watching. He knew that people were forming opinions about him. Tom began to realize that his lottery win had brought him more than money. It had brought him a choice. He could choose to fight for the land, or he could choose to respect Maria's ownership. He could choose to use his money to gain power, or he could use it to support someone else. He could choose to continue believing that money was the answer, or he could choose to learn something deeper. One evening, Tom sat alone outside his house. The sky was clear, and the stars were bright. He looked at the land that he had cared for his whole life. He thought about his father and grandfather. He thought about their hard work. He thought about the dreams they had. He thought about the way they had always believed in the value of land. He wondered if they would have understood the situation. Tom realized that his father and grandfather had always believed in fairness. They had believed that a person should do the right thing, even when it was difficult. Tom realized that he had been so focused on his own needs that he had forgotten the lessons his family had taught him. He realized that his father would have wanted him to be fair and respectful. He realized that his grandfather would have wanted him to honor the land and the people connected to it. With these thoughts in mind, Tom made a decision. He decided that he would not fight to take the land from Maria. He decided that he would respect her ownership. He decided that he would find another way to secure his ranch's future. He decided that he would use his money in a way that would bring positive change, not harm. Tom went to Maria's house the next day. He told her about his decision. He explained that he would not challenge her ownership. He explained that he would not try to take the land. He explained that he wanted to respect her history and her connection to the land. Maria listened quietly. She looked at him with a calm expression. Tom also offered her a new proposal. He told her that he would like to lease part of the land for grazing. He explained that he would pay a fair amount for the use of the land. He explained that he would respect the boundaries and the areas that were sacred to her. He explained that he would not disturb any places that were important to her family. Maria thought about the proposal. She considered it carefully. She could see that Tom was sincere. She could see that he was trying to do the right thing. She realized that leasing the land could be a way to protect it. It could also be a way to bring some financial support to her family. She realized that Tom was not just a stranger. He was someone who was willing to learn and change. After some thought, Maria agreed to the lease. She set conditions that she felt were important. She told Tom which areas he could use and which areas were off limits. She told him that he needed to respect the land and the traditions. She told him that he needed to treat the land with care. Tom agreed. The agreement was not perfect, but it was a start. It was a step toward respect and understanding. It was a way for both of them to move forward. It was a way to protect the land and honor its meaning. As the weeks passed, Tom and Maria continued to work together. They built a relationship based on trust and respect. They learned from each other. They shared stories and ideas. Tom began to see the land in a new way. He began to see it as something to protect, not just something to own. The legal claim against Maria eventually faded. It did not disappear completely, but it became less serious. People in the community began to see the situation differently. They began to respect Maria's ownership and Tom's decision to support her. They began to see that the story was not about winning or losing, but about fairness and respect. Tom still had challenges on the ranch, but he felt a new sense of peace. He knew that he had made a difficult decision, but he also knew that it was the right one. He knew that the lottery win had given him more than money. It had given him a chance to become a better person. And so Tom continued to work on the ranch with a new heart. He continued to care for the land, but now he did it with respect for the people who had lived there long before him. He knew that his life had changed, and he knew that the future would still have challenges, but he also knew that he was no longer alone. He had found a way to move forward with honor and understanding. Tom had never imagined that his life would change so much after winning the lottery. At first, he thought the money would solve all his problems. He thought he would finally be able to expand his ranch and make his family's future secure. But he had learned that money was not a simple solution. It could bring new problems, and it could reveal things he had never noticed before. Now, as time passed, Tom began to feel a deeper understanding of what his life truly meant. He realized that the lottery win had not only changed his financial situation, it had changed his heart. It had changed the way he saw the world. He had learned that some things were more important than money. He had learned that respect, fairness, and understanding were worth more than any amount of cash. The lease agreement with Maria had been working well. Tom was careful to follow the rules. He only used the land areas that Maria had allowed. He made sure his cattle did not enter the sacred parts of the land. He respected the boundaries, and he made sure to keep the land cleaned. He also paid Maria on time, without any delay. He wanted to show her that he was trustworthy.
Maria noticed the change in Tom. She could see that he was sincere.
She could see that he was trying to do the right thing. She appreciated his respect. She also noticed that he was becoming more interested in the land's history and culture. He would ask her questions, not in a rude or demanding way, but in a curious and respectful way. He wanted to learn. He wanted to understand. One day, Maria invited Tom to a small gathering with her family again. This time, it was not a tense meeting. It was a friendly gathering. They shared food, stories, and laughter. Tom felt more comfortable this time. He felt like he was becoming a part of the community. He felt like he was being accepted. During the gathering, Maria's grandson told a story about how the land had been important to their family. He explained that the land was not only for living and working, but also for teaching children about their history. Tom listened carefully. He realized that the land was a living lesson. It was a place where culture and memories were passed down. Tom felt a deep sense of respect. He realized that he had been lucky to learn about the land from Maria and her family. He realized that his own life had been limited by his own viewpoint. He had not thought about the deeper meaning of the land before. He had not thought about the stories that were connected to it. As Tom continued to work on his ranch, he also began to think about the future. He still wanted to protect his family's legacy. He still wanted to provide a good life for his children. But he now understood that protecting the legacy was not only about land and money, it was also about values. It was about teaching his children to be fair, respectful, and kind. Tom began to share the story of his experience with his children. He told them about the land dispute and about Maria. He told them how he had learned to change his thinking. He told them that money was not the most important thing in life. He told them that people and relationships mattered more. He wanted his children to learn from his mistakes and from his growth. His children listened carefully. They asked questions. They wanted to know more about Maria and her family. They wanted to know why the land was so important. Tom explained that the land was part of their history. He explained that it was a place where families could connect to their past. He explained that it was a place of memories and traditions. Tom's children began to understand. They began to see that their father's experience had taught him something valuable. They began to see that respect and understanding were important. They began to see that money was not everything. Tom also began to think about how he could use his lottery money in a way that would help the community. He had already used some of it to improve the ranch. He had fixed fences, bought better equipment, and made the land more sustainable. But he wanted to do more. He wanted to use the money to make a positive difference. He decided to invest in a small community project. He worked with the town council and local organizations to create a fund that would help local families in need. The fund would provide support for school supplies, medical bills, and small business projects. Tom believed that the community had supported him during his hard times, and he wanted to give back. The project was not easy. There were many details to manage. Tom had to work with different people and organizations. He had to ensure that the money was used fairly and responsibly. He had to learn how to manage a community fund. It was a new challenge, but he was determined. As the project grew, Tom began to feel a sense of pride. He realized that the lottery win had given him an opportunity to make a difference. He realized that he could use his money to help others, not just himself. He realized that true success was not only about personal gain, it was about helping others. The community began to notice Tom's efforts. People appreciated his generosity and his willingness to help. They began to see him as more than just a rancher who had won the lottery. They began to see him as someone who cared about others. They began to see him as a leader. Even Maria's family noticed the changes. They saw that Tom was not trying to take advantage of anyone. They saw that he was sincere. They saw that he was trying to build a better future for everyone. They began to trust him more. One day, Maria came to Tom's ranch. She brought him a small gift, a handmade piece of cloth. She told him that she appreciated his efforts and his respect. She told him that she was proud of the way he had changed. She told him that she believed he was a good man. Tom felt a deep sense of gratitude. He realized that the relationship he had built with Maria was one of the most important things that had come from the lottery win. He realized that he had gained something far more valuable than money. He had gained understanding, friendship, and respect. As the years passed, Tom continued to work on the ranch. He continued to honor the land and the people connected to it. He continued to support the community. He continued to learn from Maria and her family. He continued to grow. The land dispute eventually became a story that people remembered, not as a battle, but as a lesson. People remembered how Tom had chosen respect over power. People remembered how Maria had stood strong and protected her family's history. People remembered how both of them had found a way to work together. Tom's life was not perfect. He still faced challenges. The weather still affected the ranch. The market still changed, but he felt more confident. He felt more at peace. He knew that he had made the right choices. The lottery win had changed his life, but not in the way he had expected. It had not simply made him rich. It had changed him from the inside. It had taught him that money was not the most important thing. It had taught him that respect and fairness mattered more. It had taught him that true wealth was found in relationships, understanding, and kindness. Tom looked out over the land one evening watching the sunset. He felt a deep sense of peace. He thought about the journey he had taken. He thought about the lessons he had learned. He thought about the people who had helped him grow. He smiled, knowing that his life was richer than he had ever imagined. And so, Tom continued to live on the land he loved, not as a man who owned everything, but as a man who respected what he had and what others had too. He continued to work hard, but he did it with a new heart. He continued to dream, but his dreams were no longer only about money. They were about community, fairness, and meaning. The end of the story was not an ending, but a beginning. It was the start of a new way of living, a new way of seeing the world, and a new way of understanding what true success really meant.